Giwan Kim stepped through the simple metal detector and waited for the alarm to sound. Nothing happened. She looked around in confusion as the security guard, tall blue creature with 4 arms, waved her through with a bored expression. "That's it?" she asked the guard. The alien guard looked at her with large yellow eyes. "You are human, yes. Then you may pass." Guan walked into the main hall of the Galactic Federation Council building. The ceiling stretched high above her head, made of some kind of crystal that showed the stars outside. Hundreds of different alien species filled the massive space, their voices creating a buzz of sound in dozens of languages. She had been dreaming of this moment for years. As Earth's newest ambassador, she was finally here at the center of galactic politics. But something was wrong. Behind her, she heard loud beeping sounds. She turned to see a group of tall, lizard-like creatures going through a completely different security process. They stood in glass chambers while bright lights scanned their bodies. Each one had to remove armor plates from their shoulders and arms. One guard collected what looked like small weapons from their belts. "Remove all biological enhancements," called out a security officer. "Place defensive shields in the collection bins." Guan watched as more aliens went through the same process. Small, furry creatures with sharp claws had to wear special gloves. A group of floating jellyfish-like beings had their tentacles scanned for poison. Even the peaceful-looking plant people had to surrender, some kind of thorn shooters. But she had just walked through a simple metal detector, the same kind they used at airports on Earth. "Confused?" asked a voice behind her. Jiwon turned to see a middle-aged Korean man in a neat black suit. He had kind eyes and gray hair, and he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had been here many times before. "I'm Ambassador Daeho Park," he said, extending his hand. "I've been waiting for you." "Guan Kim," she replied, shaking his hand. "I'm supposed to be Earth's new cultural attaché. But I think there's been some mistake with security." Park smiled. "No mistake. Come, let me show you around." As they walked through the hall, Giwan noticed something else strange. The alien delegates looked at them differently, not with hostility, but with something that looked almost like respect. Some even stepped aside to let them pass. A group of the tall lizard creatures Park told her they were called Vrex were standing near a large window. Their leader, a massive creature with dark green scales, watched the 2 humans approach. His yellow eyes followed their movement. "Ambassador Park," the Vrex leader said in heavily accented English. "Another soft skin joins your delegation?"
Enter.
Dr. Park replied calmly. "Yes, this is Ambassador Kim. She'll be handling cultural exchange programs." The Vrex commander looked down at Guan. She was barely 5 feet tall, and he was nearly 8 feet. His claws were as long as her fingers, and his teeth were sharp enough to cut metal. "Tell me, human," Thector said, "why do your people get special treatment?" "My warriors must surrender their honor blades. Silathy cannot bring their mind shields. Even the peaceful Borkin must leave their energy tools at security. But you humans walk through with nothing more than a simple scan." Guan looked up. "At the towering alien? I honestly don't know." "I was wondering the same thing." Six eyes narrowed. "You don't know?" "How interesting." He turned to Park. "Does the young one speak truth?" "She does," Park said. "She'll learn in time." The Vrex commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "Learn what?" "That humans are too weak to be dangerous. That your species needs protection like younglings?" Several other aliens had gathered around to listen. Giwan felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She wanted to defend humanity, but she didn't even understand what they were talking about. Commander Park said, his voice still calm. "I think you know better than that." Something passed between the two of them. Thector's aggressive posture changed slightly. He stepped back. "Perhaps I do," the Vrex said quietly. "Perhaps I do." The group of aliens slowly moved away. Jiwan noticed they kept glancing back at Park as they left. "What was that about?" Jiwan asked. "Office politics," Park replied. "Come, let me show you to your quarters. You'll want to rest." Before tomorrow's session, as they walked through the corridors, Guan saw more of the same pattern. Aliens would approach them, sometimes aggressively, but always back down when they looked at Park. He never raised his voice or made any threatening gestures. He just spoke calmly, and somehow that was enough. They passed the main council chamber, where hundreds of seats were arranged in a perfect circle. At the center was a tall crystal formation that seemed to pulse with its own light. The council speaker, Park, explained, "It's the oldest being in the Federation. No one knows exactly how old, but it's been leading council sessions for over 1,000 years. It looks like a giant diamond," Guan said. "More like living crystal, communicates through light patterns and sound waves. Very wise, very fair, and very old." They stopped at a door marked with human symbols. Park placed his hand on a scanner, and the door slid open. "Your quarters," he said. "Tomorrow morning, we'll attend your first council session. You'll be observing for now, learning how things work." Guan looked around her new home. It was comfortable, with a bed, desk, and a large window showing the stars. On the desk was a thick folder marked Federation Laws and Customs. "Mr. Park," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do the aliens seem almost afraid of you? I mean, you're just a normal person. You don't have claws or armor or any weapons." Park smiled and sat down in a chair by the window. "That's a very good question, Juan, and it's exactly the right question to ask. But you're not going to answer it? Not today. But I will tell you this. The reason humans are allowed to enter the council halls unarmed has nothing to do with us being weak or harmless." He stood up and walked to the door. "Read the folder tonight. Pay special attention to the section on the Terra incident. It happened before you were born, but it's the reason for everything you've seen today." "What happened during the Terra incident?" Park paused at the door. "The galaxy learned something very important about humans. Something that changed how every species in the Federation sees us." "What did they learn?" "That the most dangerous weapon isn't always the most obvious one." He stepped into the hallway. "Good night, Juan. Tomorrow will be very educational." The door closed, leaving Juan alone with her thoughts and the thick folder of Federation laws. She picked up the folder and found the section about the Terra incident. Most of it was marked as classified, but she could see it involved the first human delegation to the Federation. She looked out her window at the stars, thinking about the strange day. Every alien species she had seen was naturally armed in some way: claws, teeth, poison, natural armor, or mental powers. Humans had none of these things, so why did they seem so afraid of a middle-aged diplomat in a business suit? Juan opened the folder and began to read. Tomorrow, she would start learning the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. She had a feeling it would be nothing like what she expected. Jiwan woke up early the next morning with more questions than answers. The folder about Federation laws had been mostly useless. Every mention of the Terra incident was covered with black marks. The only thing she could read was the date too, 100 years ago, and a note that said, "Classification level, highest priority." She dressed quickly and went to find Ambassador Park. His quarters were just down the hall from hers. When she knocked, he opened the door, already dressed in his neat black suit. "Good morning, Juan," he said. "You look like you didn't sleep well. I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about the Terra incident. I tried to read about it, but everything was blacked out." Park nodded. "I expected that. The Federation keeps tight control over that information. But maybe we can find another way to learn about it." "What do you mean? There's someone I want you to meet." "His name is Min-Ho Lee. He works in our cultural research department. He's very good at finding information that other people want to keep hidden." They walked through the corridors of the Federation building. Guan noticed that the morning shift of aliens seemed different from yesterday. These ones looked more serious, more focused. Their conversations were quieter. "The morning shift handles the real work," Park explained. "The afternoon shift is mostly for show. If you want to understand how the Federation really works, you need to watch the morning people." They took an elevator down several floors. Deeper they went, the quieter it became. Finally, they reached a level that looked completely different from the upper floors. The walls were plain metal, and the lights were dimmer. "The research levels," Park said. "Most aliens never come down here. They think it's boring. They found Minho Lee in a small office filled with computer screens and stacks of papers.
It was Minho Lee's.
A thin man with thick glasses, and he looked up when they entered. "Ambassador Park," he said, standing up quickly. "You must be the new cultural attaché." "I'm Minho Lee." "Gyuwon Kim," she replied, shaking his hand. "Mr. Park says you're good at finding hidden information." Minho laughed. "I prefer to think of it as finding information that people forgot they hid. What can I help you with?" "The Terra incident," Park said. "She needs to understand what happened." Minho's expression became serious. "Ah, that's not easy information to find. The Federation locked it down pretty tight after it happened." "But you can find it?" Gyuwon asked. "Maybe, but we'll need to go to the main archives, and we'll need help from someone who has access to the restricted sections." An hour later, they were standing in the massive Federation archives. The ceiling was so high that Gyuwon couldn't see the top. Shelves stretched in every direction, filled with books, data crystals, and strange devices she didn't recognize. "The Federation keeps records of everything," Minho explained. "Every treaty, every war, every first contact. It's all here somewhere." A floating creature approached them. It looked like a giant jellyfish, but its tentacles glowed with soft blue light. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music. "Welcome to the archives," it said. "I am Valandra, the head librarian. How may I assist you today?" "We're looking for information about the Terra incident," Park said. The creature's tentacles stopped glowing for a moment. "That is restricted information. It's only council members and senior diplomats have access to those records." Park showed his identification. "Senior Ambassador, Earth Delegation." Valandra's tentacles began glowing again, but the light was different now. More careful. "Very well," she said. "But I must warn you, those records are restricted for good reason. Knowledge is dangerous to possess." She led them deep into the archives, past sections marked with symbols Gyuwon didn't recognize. Finally, they reached a door that looked different from all the others. It was made of some kind of dark metal, and it had no handle. "Place your hand here," Valandra said to Park, indicating a flat panel on the door. Park put his hand on the panel. Glowed green, and the door slid open silently. Inside was a small room with a single table and a few chairs. On the table was a data crystal and a viewing device. "This contains all available information about the Terra incident," Valandra said. "You may view it here, but you cannot make copies or remove anything from this room." She floated away, leaving them alone. Minho activated the viewing device. Holographic screen appeared above the table. Text began scrolling across it, along with images and video clips. "Here we go," he said. "The Terra incident, Federation year 2847. That's about 200 years ago in Earth time." The first document was a report from the Federation Council. It described the arrival of the first human delegation to the Federation headquarters. 5 humans, led by someone called Admiral Sunwoo Choi. "Admiral Choi," Gyuwon read aloud. "He was the first human to come here." "More than that," Park said. "He was the one who negotiated Earth's membership in the Federation. For him, most species thought humans were too primitive to be worth talking to." The next document was more interesting. It was a psychological profile of the human delegation. Gyuwon read it carefully. Subject species: Homo sapiens. Physical characteristics: average height 1.7 meters, average weight 70 kilograms. No natural armor, no natural weapons, no psychic abilities. Classified as non-threatening. "Non-threatening," Minho repeated. "That's interesting." They continued reading. The document showed that every other species in the Federation had some kind of natural weapon or defense. The Vrex had their armor and claws. The Silethi had powerful mental abilities. The Borkin could control energy with their minds. Even the peaceful plant people could shoot poisonous thorns. But humans had nothing. No claws, no armor, no special powers. They were classified as the weakest species ever to join the Federation. "So what happened?" Gyuwon asked. Minho scrolled to the next section. "Here's where it gets interesting. The human delegation was invited to a special ceremony. It was supposed to be a celebration of Earth joining the Federation. The document described a grand feast in the main council chamber. Representatives from 50 different species attended. The humans sat at the center table, honored guests at their own welcome party. But someone didn't want humans in the Federation, Park said quietly. The next document was a security report. It described how a group called the Krallian Hegemony had decided to test human resolve. They were a militant species known for their multiple arms and razor-sharp claws. They believed that humans were too weak to deserve Federation membership. They planned to embarrass the humans publicly, Minho read. Make them look weak and cowardly in front of all the other species. What did they do? They took the human delegation hostage during the ceremony. Guan felt her heart racing. 5 unarmed humans against how many Krallians? According to this, about 20. All armed with traditional weapons and protected by natural armor. The next document was a medical report. It listed injuries from the incident. But something was wrong with the numbers. Right, Guan said. This says 20 Krallian casualties and 0 human casualties. That can't be right. Keep reading, Park said. The medical report was detailed. Broken bones, cuts, bruises, and what looked like psychological trauma. All of the injuries were 2 Krallian fighters. The humans had no injuries at all. How is that possible? Juan asked. Minho found the next document. It was a personal log from Admiral Choi, written after the incident. Day 1 of negotiations, he read aloud. The other species still see us as weak because we have no natural weapons. They don't understand that we don't need them. Every environment on Earth tried to kill us, so we learned to use everything as a weapon, a pen, a chair, a glass of water. Humans can turn anything into a tool of survival. Day 3 of negotiations. The Krallians tested us today. They expected us to beg for mercy or call for help. Instead, we showed them what 1,000 years of evolution has taught us. We are not the strongest species, but we are the most adaptable. Day 5 of negotiations. The incident is over. The Krallians are recovering in the medical bay. We finished the treaty negotiations while their medics worked on their injuries. I think they finally understand what makes humans different. It's the final. Entry was short. They still don't understand what makes us dangerous. Perhaps it's better that way. When looked at Park and Minho, what does that mean? It means, Park said, that the Federation learned something very important about humans during the Terra incident. Something that changed how every species sees us. But what did they learn? Minho was scrolling through more documents. Here's something interesting. Psychological evaluation of the human delegation written after the incident. Read aloud. Subject species demonstrates unprecedented adaptability. Unlike other species, which rely on specialized natural weapons, humans use environmental resources and tactical thinking. Recommendation. Classify as extreme caution level threat. Extreme caution, Guan repeated. But the first report said we were non-threatening. That was before the Terra incident, Park explained. After that, everything changed. The final document was a Federation Council ruling. It was short but very clear. All species entering Federation facilities must surrender natural and artificial weapons. Exception: human delegations may enter unarmed, as they pose no additional threat. When armed, Guan stared at the screen. No additional threat when armed? What does that mean? Park stood up and walked to the door. It means, Guan, that the Federation learned something about humans that day. Something that made them realize that giving us weapons wouldn't make us any more dangerous than we already are. But we're not dangerous, Guan protested. We're just normal people. Minho and Park exchanged a look. Are we? Park asked quietly. The viewing device shut off automatically. Their time in the restricted archives was over, but Guan felt like she had more questions now than when they started. As they walked back toward the elevator, she thought about Admiral Choi's words. What had 5 unarmed humans done to 20 armed Krallian warriors? And why did that make the Federation more afraid of humans, not less? Tomorrow, she would attend her first council session. Then she would start to understand the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. Guan couldn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about the documents they had found in the archives. 5 unarmed humans against 20 armed Krallian warriors. 0 human casualties. 20 alien casualties. None of it made sense. She got up early and went to find Minho. His office was already lit up, and she could see him working at his computer screens. "You couldn't sleep either?" she asked when she knocked on his door. "I've been thinking about those documents all night," he said. "Something doesn't add up. The medical reports were too detailed, like they were trying to prove something." "What do you mean? Look at this." He showed her his computer screen. "I've been comparing the injury reports from the Terra incident with other Federation security incidents. The Krallian injuries were very specific, not random fighting injuries." Juan looked at the screen. The medical reports showed broken wrists, dislocated shoulders, and what looked like pressure point damage. Very precise injuries. "It's like someone knew exactly how to hurt them without killing them," she said. "Exactly. And there's something else. I found a reference to video footage from the incident." Giwan's heart started beating faster. "Footage? Can we see it? That's the problem. The reference exists, but I can't find the actual footage. It should be in the archives, but it's not listed in any of the databases." They spent the next hour searching through different archive systems. Finally, Minho found something here, he said. "There's a backup storage system that most people don't know about. It's for footage that's considered too sensitive for the main archives. Can you access it?" "Not from here. We'd need to go back to the archives and use one of the high-security viewing stations." An hour later, they were back in the Federation archives. Valandra, the floating librarian, seemed surprised to see them again. "You returned very quickly," she said. "Did you not find what you were looking for yesterday?" "We need to access the backup footage storage," Minho said. "Security level 7. Valandra's tentacles stopped glowing completely. "That is very restricted material." "Are you certain? You have authorization?" Park appeared behind them. "I do," he said quietly. "Senior Ambassador privileges." The librarian studied him for a long moment. "Very well, but I must warn you. Footage from that storage level is restricted for very good reasons. Some images cannot be unseen." She led them to a different section of the archives. This area was even more restricted than where they had been yesterday. The walls were thicker, and there were security scanners every few meters. Finally, they reached a room that looked more like a bank vault than a library. Valandra used 3 different security keys to open the door. Inside was a single chair. Facing a large screen, next to it was a control panel with buttons marked in several different languages. "This is the complete footage from the Terra incident," Valandra said. "It was recorded by the Federation security cameras during the UH ceremony. The footage is unedited and complete." She paused at the door. "I will be outside if you need me, but I suggest you prepare yourselves. What you are about to see changed how the entire Federation views humanity." The door closed behind her, leaving them alone in the vault. Minho sat down at the control panel. "Are you ready for this?" Giwan and Park nodded. Minho pressed the play button. The screen came to life, showing a large ceremonial hall. Tables were arranged in a circle, with hundreds of different alien species seated around them. In the center was a smaller table where 5 humans sat. "There's Admiral Choi," Park said, pointing to a tall man with gray hair at the center of the human table. The humans looked relaxed and happy. They were talking with their alien neighbors and trying different types of food. It looked like a normal diplomatic dinner. "They seem so ordinary," Juan said. "Keep watching," Park replied. The footage continued for several minutes. Everything seemed normal. Then, suddenly, a group of tall, multi-armed aliens stood up from their table. They moved quickly toward the human table. "The Krallians," Minho said. The Krallian leader, a massive creature with 4 arms and razor-sharp claws, approached Admiral Choi. The audio was clear enough to hear their conversation. "Human leader," the Krallian said in accented English. "Challenge your right to be here. You are too weak to deserve Federation membership." Admiral Choi looked up calmly. "I'm sorry you feel that way. Perhaps we can discuss this after dinner." "No discussion," the Krallian replied. "You will prove your strength now, or you will leave. The other Krallians surrounded the human table. Each one was nearly 8 feet tall, with natural armor and multiple arms ending in sharp claws. They carried traditional weapons, curved blades, and energy sticks. "You are our prisoners," the Krallian leader announced. "You will beg for mercy. In front of all these witnesses, then you will go back to your little planet and never return." The entire hall went silent. Hundreds of aliens watched to see what would happen. Admiral Choi stood up slowly. He was maybe 6 feet tall, completely unarmed, and looked like an ordinary, middle-aged man. "I see," he said calmly. "You want to test our strength?" "We want to show everyone how weak you are," the Krallian leader replied. What happened next was so fast that Ji-won had to ask Minho to replay it. "Admiral," Choi picked up a simple metal pen from the table. With one smooth motion, he pressed it against a specific point on the Krallian leader's neck. The massive alien dropped to the floor, unconscious. "Pressure point," Park explained. He knew exactly where to press to shut down the Krallian's nervous system. The other Krallians attacked immediately. But the humans were ready. Dr. Hai-Jin Nam, a small woman sitting next to Admiral Choi, grabbed a water pitcher from the table. She threw the water in one Krallian's face, temporarily blinding him. Then she used the heavy pitcher to strike another Krallian's wrist, causing him to drop his weapon. Another human delegate, a man named Ye-Ho Kim, broke a dinner plate and used a sharp piece to cut through a Krallian's armor straps. The alien's natural armor fell away, leaving him defenseless. But what shocked Ji-won the most was how calm they remained. While fighting off their attackers, the humans continued talking to each other about the treaty negotiations. Article 7. "Needs revision," Admiral Choi said, while dodging a Krallian's claws. "Agreed," replied Dr. Nam while disabling another attacker. "The trade regulations are too restrictive. We should discuss mining rights after we finish here," added Delegate Kim, while using a table leg to trip a Krallian. Within 3 minutes, all 20 Krallian attackers were on the floor. Some were unconscious, others were injured, but none were seriously hurt. The humans had used just enough force to stop them, nothing more. The entire hall was completely silent. Hundreds of alien species stared at the human table in shock. Admiral Choi helped the Krallian leader to his feet. "Are you hurt?" he asked with genuine concern. The Krallian leader looked at him with fear in his eyes. What are you?" "We're diplomats," Admiral Choi replied. "We're here to negotiate a treaty." He gestured to the other humans, who were helping the injured Krallians to chairs and offering them water. Now Admiral Choi said to the entire hall, "Shall we continue with the ceremony? I believe we were discussing Article 7 of the membership agreement." The footage continued, showing the humans calmly finishing their dinner while medics treated the Krallian injuries. The other alien species watched them with a mixture of awe and fear. "They finished the treaty negotiations that same night," Park said as the footage ended. While the Krallians were still in the medical bay, Juan stared at the blank screen. How did they know how to do that? How did they know exactly where to hit each alien to disable them without killing them? "That's what the Federation wanted to know," Park replied. "They spent months studying the footage and interviewing the humans." "What did they find?" Minho pulled up another document on the screen. "Here's the psychological evaluation they did afterward. It's fascinating." The document was titled Human Combat Analysis, Terra Incident Follow-Up Study. Subject species demonstrates unprecedented adaptability in combat situations, Minho read aloud. Unlike other species, which rely on instinctive fighting patterns, humans analyze their opponents in real time and adapt their tactics accordingly. Key findings. Humans study their enemies' weaknesses during combat. They use environmental resources as weapons. They maintain rational thought processes, even under extreme stress. They show precise control over the amount of force used. Conclusion: humans are the most dangerous species encountered by the Federation. Not because of their physical abilities, but because of their mental adaptability. Gi-won felt like the room was spinning. The most dangerous species? But we're not dangerous. We're just normal people. Park stood up and walked to the screen. "Are we, Ji-won? Think about what you just saw. 5 ordinary humans defeated 20 trained warriors using dinner utensils and water pitchers. But that was different. Those were special people, trained soldiers or something, No, Park said quietly. Admiral Choi was a diplomat. Dr. Nam was a scientist. Delegate Kim was a trade negotiator. They were ordinary people, just like us. Minho found another document. Here's something interesting. After the Terra incident, the Federation did intelligence studies on Earth. They wanted to understand how humans could be so effective in combat. What did they find? Discovered that every human culture has developed. The next evening, Ambassador Park invited Ji-won to dinner in his private quarters. The room was much larger than hers, with a small kitchen and a dining table that looked out at the stars. The smell of Korean food filled the air. I thought you might be homesick, Park said as he set plates on the table. I made kimchi stew and rice, nothing fancy, but it tastes like home. Guan sat down gratefully. She hadn't realized how much she missed familiar food until she smelled it. Thank you. I've been living on Federation rations for 3 days. They ate in comfortable silence for a while.
Oh.
The stew was perfect, spicy and warm, and exactly like her grandmother used to make. Finally, Park set down his chopsticks and looked at her seriously. You've had time to think about what we saw in the archives, he said. Do you have questions? A million questions, Ji-won replied. But the biggest one is this. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why don't humans know about our reputation in the galaxy? Park poured tea for both of them. What do you think would happen if everyone on Earth knew that aliens see us as the most dangerous species in the galaxy? Guan thought about it. Would panic, or they'd get too confident. Either way, it would change how we act. Exactly. Our strength comes from the fact that we don't think of ourselves as dangerous. We just act naturally. If we started trying to be intimidating, we'd lose. What makes us effective? But I still don't understand how 5 diplomats could defeat 20 trained warriors so icily. Park smiled and walked to a bookshelf. He pulled out a thick photo album and brought it back to the table. Let me tell you some stories, he said. Opening the album, stories about my 15 years as a Federation diplomat. The first photo showed Park shaking hands with a tall, crystalline being. This is Ambassador Kethfer of the Silithi Confederation. 3 years ago, his people were planning to invade a peaceful mining colony. They believed the miners were stealing from Silithi territory. What happened? They stopped the invasion with a history lesson. Guan blinked. A history lesson? Silithi are very proud of their ancient culture. I spent 2 weeks studying their historical records. Then I invited Ambassador Kethfer to dinner and told him a story about his own ancestors. Park turned the page. The next photo showed the same crystalline being, but this time he looked much more relaxed. I told him about a Silithi hero from 1,000 years ago, a great leader who refused to attack innocent people, even when his advisors said it would make him stronger. By the end of dinner, Ambassador Kethfer was comparing himself to that ancient hero. And he called off the invasion? He did more than that. He sent aid ships to help the mining colony improve their operations. He wanted to be like his ancestor, a protector instead of a conqueror. Guan stared at the photo. You manipulated him. I educated him, Park corrected gently. I showed him a better path by using his own values in history. No threats, no weapons, no violence, just words and knowledge. He turned to another page. This photo showed Park standing with a group of large, furry creatures. The Borkan trade dispute of 3 years ago, he said. The Borkans were angry because they thought human merchants were cheating them in trade deals. Were they somewhere, but not intentionally? Humans and Borkans count differently. We use base 10, they use base 12. So when we said 100 units, they heard 144 units in their system. That's a big difference. Big. Enough to start a trade war. The Borkans were ready to ban all human merchants from their space. That would have hurt both our economies. Park smiled at the photo. I spent a week learning Borkan mathematics. Then I invited their trade minister to a meeting and showed him the problem. We worked out a new system that both species could understand. And they ended the dispute. They did better than that. They made me an honorary Borkan mathematician. Look. He showed her a certificate covered in strange symbols. I'm the first human to receive this honor. Giwan was beginning to see a pattern. You solve problems by understanding how other species think. That's what humans do, Park said. We adapt. We learn. We find solutions that work for everyone. He turned to another photo. This one showed him with a group of reptilian creatures that looked like smaller versions of the Verks. The Saurian independence crisis, he said. Civil war that lasted 8 years. 2 billion people died. How did you stop a civil war? I didn't stop it. Help them stop it themselves. Park's expression became sad. The Saurians were fighting over religious differences. Each side believed the other was evil. They'd been killing each other for so long that they forgot why they started fighting. What did you do? Attended their religious ceremonies, both sides. I learned their prayers, their songs, their holy stories. I discovered something interesting. He showed her another photo. This one showed Saurians from both sides of the war sitting together at a large table. Their religions were almost identical. They worshipped the same gods, followed the same moral principles, even used the same prayers. The only difference was the language they prayed in. Giwan felt her mouth fall open. They were killing each other over translation differences. Essentially, yes. Over thousands of years, their language had evolved differently in different regions, but the meaning was the same. So you brought them together and showed them the similarities? It took 6 months. I had to translate their holy books, organize meetings, and convince both sides to listen to each other. But eventually they realized they were brothers who had been fighting over a misunderstanding. Park closed the album. That's what humans do, Giwan. We see patterns that other species miss. We find connections that seem impossible. We solve problems by thinking differently. But how, I mean? I'm not special. I'm just a normal person. I couldn't do any of those things. Park looked at her seriously. Couldn't you? Let me ask you something. When you were studying for this job, how did you prepare? I read everything I could find about alien cultures. I studied their languages, their customs, their histories. I wanted to understand how they think. And why did you do that? Because that's how you communicate with people. You have to understand their perspective. Park nodded. Exactly. But do you know what makes that special? What do you mean? Most species don't do that. When a Vrex meets a Silithy, the Vrex thinks like a Vrex and expects the Silithy to understand. When a Borkin negotiates with a Saurian, the Borkin uses Borkin logic and assumes it will work. He stood up and walked to the window. But humans automatically try to think like the other person. It's so natural to us that we don't even realize we're doing it. Guan thought about this. Is that why the aliens seem afraid of us? Partly. Imagine you're playing a game and you've been using the same strategies for thousands of years, and someone new joins the game, and they change their strategy every single move based on what you're doing. That would be frustrating. Frustrating. It would be terrifying. You'd never know what to expect. Park returned to the table. The Federation has spent 200 years trying to understand human psychology. They've written thousands of reports, conducted hundreds of studies, and their conclusion is always the same, which is humans are unpredictable because they don't have a fixed nature. Every other species has genetic programming that makes them act in certain ways. But humans can choose to be anything. He picked up the photo album again. A human can be a warrior like Admiral Choi, a negotiator like me, a scientist like Dr. Nam, or a cultural attach like you. We can change our approach based on what the situation needs. But other species can do different jobs too. But they do them in ways that match their nature. A Vrex warrior fights with strength and honor. A Vrex diplomat negotiates with strength and honor. A Vrex scientist researches with strength and honor. And humans. A human warrior fights however they need to win. A human diplomat negotiates however they need to succeed. A human scientist researches however they need to find the truth. Guan felt like pieces of a puzzle were falling into place. So when the Federation sees a human, they don't know what to expect. Exactly. They know a Vrex will act like a Vrex. They know a Silithy will act like a Silithy. But a human might act like anyone, depending on what works best. Is that why they let us stay unarmed? Park nodded. Think about it from their perspective. If you give a Vrex a weapon, you know exactly how they'll use it with honor. In direct combat, following their traditional fighting style. But if you give a human a weapon, you have no idea what they'll do with it. They might use it traditionally, or they might take it apart and build something completely different. Or they might ignore it and use a dinner fork instead. Park stood up and began clearing the dishes. The Federation realized that human creativity is more dangerous than any weapon they could give us.
Out.
So they decided it was safer to let us stay unarmed.
Right.
They decided it didn't matter whether we were armed or not.
Out.
We're going to be unpredictable either way. Guan helped him clean up, thinking about everything he'd told her. Mr. Park, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever feel guilty about being able to manipulate other species so easily? Park stopped washing dishes and looked at her. Do you think that's what I do? Manipulate them. Well, you use their psychology against them. You find their weaknesses and exploit them. Is that what you saw in those stories? Guan thought about it. The trade dispute that was solved by better communication. The war that ended when both sides realized they were fighting over nothing. The invasion that was stopped by reminding someone of their better nature.
Ow.
She said slowly. You helped them find solutions that were good for everyone. That's the difference between manipulation and diplomacy, Park said. Manipulation is using someone's weaknesses to get what you want. Diplomacy is using your understanding of someone to help them get what they really need. And humans are good at that because we naturally try to understand other perspectives. We're good at it because we care about finding solutions that work. Most species want to win. Humans want to solve the problem. Park finished the last dish and dried his hands. Tomorrow, Guan, you'll attend your first council session. You'll see dozens of different species trying to communicate with each other. And you'll start to understand why the Federation needs humans. Why? Because in a galaxy full of species who can't understand each other, humans are the translators. Not just of language, but of thought and culture and values. He walked her to the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be very educational. As Jiwan walked back to her quarters, she thought about everything Park had told her. Humans weren't dangerous because they were strong or violent. They were dangerous because they could think like anyone, adapt to anything, and find solutions that no one else could see. For the first time since arriving at the Federation, she felt like she understood her purpose here. She wasn't just a cultural attach. She was a translator between worlds, a bridge between species that might never understand each other without human help. Tomorrow, she would see that responsibility in action. The next morning, Guan attended her first official council session. The massive chamber was filled with hundreds of alien delegates, each sitting in specially designed seats that matched their species' needs. The air buzzed with dozens of different languages being translated. Through small devices that each delegate wore, Park had given her a seat in the human observation section, where she could watch and learn without having to participate. She felt nervous but excited as the council speaker. The ancient crystal beam began the session with pulses of colored light. Today's agenda includes trade route disputes, mining rights negotiations, and the proposal from the Hegemony Coalition, the speaker announced. Its voice came through the translation devices as a calm, neutral tone. G1 watched as different species presented their cases. The Borkan delegation spoke about asteroid mining rights. The Silathi discussed trade agreements for rare crystals. Everything seemed peaceful and organized. Then the Hegemony Coalition was called to present their proposal. Commander Thector of the Vrex stood up, along with representatives from 5 other militant species. They looked angry and determined as they approached the center of the chamber. Council Speaker Thector began. We come before you today to address an injustice that has continued for too long. Juan felt her stomach tighten. She had a bad feeling about where this was going. The human delegation receives special treatment that no other species enjoys. Thector continued. They are allowed to enter our sacred halls without surrendering their weapons or submitting to proper security scans. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many delegates turned to look at the human section. This privilege was granted 200 years ago, under very different circumstances, said another coalition member. A tall insect-like creature with sharp mandibles. The humans have had time to prove themselves. It is time for equal treatment. Park sat quietly in his seat, his expression calm and neutral. Juan noticed that his hands were relaxed, but his eyes were alert and focused. Furthermore, Thector continued, "We believe that human delegates use psychological manipulation tactics that give them unfair advantages in negotiations. They study our weaknesses and exploit them for their own benefit." More murmurs from the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement. "The coalition demands that humans be subjected to the same security measures as all other species," Thector declared. "No more special privileges, no more unfair advantages." The council speaker's light pulsed thoughtfully. "This is a serious proposal that requires careful consideration." Does the human delegation wish to respond? Park stood up slowly. "We do, council speaker." As he walked to the center of the chamber, Guan noticed something strange. The aliens weren't looking at Park with hostility anymore. They were watching him carefully, like they were trying to guess what he might do. Members of the coalition raise interesting points, Park began. His voice was calm and respectful. They believe humans receive unfair treatment. They feel that our methods give us advantages in negotiations. He turned to face Commander Thector directly. "I understand their concerns. After all, nobody likes to feel that they're at a disadvantage." Thector's claws extended slightly. "Admit that you manipulate us?" "I admit that we try to understand you," Park replied. "Just as you try to understand us is not the same thing," protested the insect-like delegate. "You use our cultural knowledge against us." "Do we?" Park asked. "Let me tell you what I know about the Drakmor Collective." The insect delegate stepped back slightly. Guan realized this must be a Drakmor. "Your people value honor above all else," Park continued. "You believe that direct confrontation is the only honest way to resolve disputes. You think that anyone who uses indirect methods is being dishonest." The Drakmor delegate's mandibles clicked angrily. "You prove my point. Study us to find ways to defeat us." "Actually," Park said, "I study you to find ways to work with you. For example, I know that Drakmor negotiations always include a formal challenge phase. It's considered rude to make an agreement without first testing each other's resolve." He turned to address the entire chamber. "So when the coalition challenges human privileges today, they're not just complaining. They're following Drakmor tradition by testing our strength before accepting us as equals." The Drakmor delegate's mandibles stopped clicking. He looked confused. "I also know," Park continued, "that Vrex culture values courage and directness. Commander Thector isn't here because he hates humans. He's here because his people expect him to face any potential threat head-on." Thector's aggressive posture relaxed slightly. "You... understand our ways, I try to," Park said. "Just as I try to understand Silithy, love of harmony, Borkin respect for knowledge, and Saurian dedication to justice." He gestured to the coalition members. "Each of your species has brought something valuable to this challenge. The Drakmor brought honesty. The Vrex brought courage. The Morlani brought logic. The Zephyrians brought caution. The Kalani brought strength. The Thurvak brought wisdom." Guan watched in amazement as the coalition members looked at each other. Uncertainly, Park hadn't insulted or threatened any of them. Instead, he was praising their motivations. "But here's what I find interesting," Park continued. "You're asking the council to treat humans like everyone else? You want us to follow the same rules as other species?" "Yes," Thector said firmly. "Equal treatment." "I agree completely," Park said. The chamber fell silent. Nobody had expected that response. "Humans should be treated equally," Park repeated. "We should face the same challenges as other species. We should prove ourselves using the same standards." The coalition members looked confused. Their entire argument was based on the assumption that humans would fight to keep their special privileges. "However," Park continued, "there's one ancient Federation law that I think applies here: the right of challenge." The council speaker's light pulsed brighter. "Explain." "According to Federation law, when one delegation formally challenges another's right to participate in council proceedings, the challenged delegation may demand a demonstration of capabilities. Akita's eyes widened. He realized he had just made a formal challenge. The human delegation accepts the coalition's challenge, Park announced. We're willing to prove that we deserve our place in this council. What? What kind of demonstration? Asked the Drakmore delegate, nervously. Park smiled. A diplomatic one. Give us a problem that the Federation has been unable to solve, something that requires negotiation between multiple species. If we can solve it using only words and understanding, then you'll accept that our methods have value. The coalition members huddled together, whispering frantically. Finally, Vector stepped forward. Very well, he said. We accept your terms, but we choose the problem. Of course, Meridian border dispute, Thatcher announced. A shocked silence filled the chamber. The Meridian border dispute was legendary. A three-way territorial conflict that had been going on for 50 years. 3 different species claimed the same star system, and nobody had been able to find a solution that satisfied everyone. Impossible, whispered one delegate. The Zenthi and the Ashkor have been fighting over those systems for decades. The Council has tried to mediate 23 times, added another. Every attempt has failed. Park's expression didn't change. When do we start? Now, Vector said. You have until the end of today's session, 6 hours, and if we fail, then humans will be treated like any other species. Full security scans, weapon surrenders, and no more special privileges. Park nodded. And if we succeed, then we will acknowledge that human methods have value. The council speaker pulsed with bright light. The challenge is accepted. Ambassador Park, you may begin. Park turned to Jiwan and gestured for her to join him. Come on, you're going to help me solve this? Me? Giwan's voice squeaked. I don't know anything about border disputes. You know about understanding different perspectives? Park said quietly as they walked to a private conference room. That's all we need. As they left the main chamber, Jiwan heard the excited chatter of hundreds of alien delegates. Word was already spreading throughout the Federation headquarters. The humans had accepted an impossible challenge. In 6 hours, they would either prove their worth to the entire galaxy or lose their special status forever. Mr. Park, Jiwan said as they reached the conference room. What if we can't solve it? Smiled as he opened the door. Then we'll learn something new about diplomacy. But I have a feeling that's not going to be necessary. Why not? Because, Park said, the Meridian border dispute isn't really about territory, it's about something much deeper. And once we figure out what that is, the solution will become obvious. He activated a holographic display showing the disputed star system. It's 3 planets, 3 species, 50 years of conflict. Now he said, let's start by understanding why 3 different species would fight for 50 years over a few chunks of rock in space. Giwan looked at the display and felt the weight of the entire Federation's expectations. In 6 hours, she would learn whether humans really deserved their reputation as galactic problem-solvers, or whether they were just ordinary people who had gotten lucky 200 years ago. In the private conference room, Park and Jiwan stared at the holographic display of the Meridian system. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, each one claimed by a different species. Tell me what you see, Park said to Jiwan. 3 planets? 3 species fighting over them? Guwan studied the display more carefully. Planet Meridian 1 is mostly water. Planet Meridian 2 has lots of metal, or Planet Meridian 3 is covered in forests. Good. Now, what do you know about the 3 species involved? Giwan pulled up files. On her tablet, the Kelvari are aquatic. They breathe water and need high humidity to survive. The Zenthi are silicon-based life forms that eat metal and minerals. The Ashkor are plant-like beings that need lots of sunlight and soil nutrients. Park nodded. So what seems strange about this conflict? Guan looked at the display again. Well, if the Kelvari need water, why don't they just take the water planet? The Zenthi could have the metal planet, and the Ashkor could have the forest planet. Exactly. 3 species, 3 planets, each planet perfect for 1 species. Be simple. So why have they been fighting for 50 years? That's what we need to find out. Park activated the communication system. Let's talk to them. Within minutes, representatives from all three species appeared on the holographic screen. The Kelvari delegate looked like a large dolphin with arms. The Zenthi representative was a walking crystal formation. The Ashkor delegate resembled a moving tree with a face. "We appreciate your willingness to speak with us," Park began. "We understand you've been in dispute over the Meridian system." "For many years, 53 years," said the Kelvari delegate bitterly, "and nothing has changed." "The Zenthi have stolen our rightful territory," the Ashkor delegate added, his voice rustling like leaves in wind. "The Ashkor invaded our sacred space," the Zenthi delegate replied, his voice sounding like rocks grinding together. "Wait, G1 interrupted? Sacred space? Rightful territory? I thought this was about resources." The three delegates fell silent. "What aren't you telling us?" Park asked gently. The Kelvari delegate spoke first. "The Meridian system. It is where our people first learned to travel between stars. Our ancestors launched their first spaceships from Meridian 1 over 1,000 years ago. The metals of Moravian 2 were used to build our oldest temples," the Zenthi delegate added. "They contain the memories of our ancestors." "And Meridian 3 is where our people first developed agriculture," the Ashkor delegate said. "It is the garden world where we learned to grow food beyond our home planet." Quan felt understanding dawn on her. "This isn't about the planets themselves. It's about your history. Each species considers the entire system sacred," Park said quietly. "Not just one planet, but all three planets together," the Kelvari delegate said. "The Meridian system is where all three of our species first met. We explored space together, traded with each other, learned from each other. Before the war started," the Zenthi delegate added sadly. "What war?" Juan asked. The three delegates looked uncomfortable. Finally, the Ashkor delegate answered. 53 years ago, there was a misunderstanding. Pirates attacked the system. Each of our species thought the others had betrayed us. Pirates made it look like the Kelvari were attacking Zenthi ships," the Zenthi delegate explained. "And like the Zenthi, we're destroying Ashkor colonies," the Ashkor delegate added. "And like the Ashkor, we're poisoning Kelvari water supplies." The Kelvari delegate finished. Park leaned back in his chair. "So three old friends started fighting because criminals made them think they were betraying each other." "Yes," all three delegates said at the same time. "But that was 53 years ago," Guan said. "Why are you still fighting?" The three delegates looked at each other uncomfortably. "Pride," the Zenthi delegate said finally. "We've been enemies for so long that we forgot how to be friends," the Ashkor delegate added. "And each group thinks the others should apologize first," the Kelvari delegate said. G1 looked at Park. "So this isn't really about territory or resources or even sacred history?" "No," Park said. "It's about three old friends who are too proud to admit they miss each other." He turned to the three delegates. "Tell me something. Before the war, when your species worked together in the Meridian system, how did you divide the territory?" "We didn't divide it," the Kelvari delegate said. "We shared it." "The Kelvari maintained the water systems on all three planets," the Zenthi delegate explained. "We processed the metals and minerals. The Ashkor grew food for everyone." "It was beautiful," the Ashkor delegate said wistfully. "A perfect partnership." "And that's what you really want," Park said. "It's not to own the system, but to share it again like you used to." The three delegates were quiet for a long moment. "But too much has happened," the Zenthi delegate said. "Many years of fighting, too much anger." "How can we trust each other again?" the Ashkor delegate asked. "The same way you trusted each other the first time," Giwan said suddenly. All three delegates turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" the Kelvari delegate asked. "You said you met in the Meridian system over 1,000 years ago. Now we're strangers then, but you learned to work together. What made that possible?" Three delegates thought about this. "We each had something the others needed," the Zenthi delegate said slowly. "And we were all exploring something new together," the Ashkor delegate added. "We were curious about each other instead of afraid." The Kelvari delegate finished. Park smiled. "So the question isn't how to go back to the way things were. The question is how to create something new together." "But what?" the Zenthi delegate asked. G1 had an idea. What if the Meridian system became the first interspecies research station, a place where all three of your people could study and explore together? The three delegates looked intrigued. Not owned by any one species, Park added, but governed by all three working together. Each species contributes what they do best, Juan continued. The Kelvari handled life support and environmental systems. The Zenthi handle construction and technology. Ashkor handle food production and biological research. A symbol of cooperation instead of a source of conflict, Park said. The three delegates were quiet for several minutes. Finally, the Kelvari delegate spoke. It could work, he said slowly. But who would govern such a station? The Zenthi delegate asked. We would, the Ashkor delegate said, all three species together making decisions together. Like we used to do, the Zenthi delegate said with something that might have been a smile. Like we could do again, the Kelvari delegate added. Park looked at Juan and winked.
Ow.
Shall we draft a preliminary agreement? 2 hours later, they had the framework for the Meridian Cooperation Treaty. The three species would jointly establish a research station in the system, with each species contributing their expertise and sharing in the discoveries. When they returned to the council chamber, word had already spread about their success. The room was packed with delegates who had come to see the results. The Meridian border dispute has been resolved, Park announced. The three species have agreed to establish a joint research facility that honors both their shared history and their future cooperation. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. 53 years of conflict, solved in 6 hours. Commander Thector stood up slowly. This is ... unexpected, is it? Park asked. Three species who shared a common history were fighting because they had forgotten how to trust each other. Once they remembered what they had in common, the solution became obvious. But how did you know? The Drakmor delegate asked. How did you know it wasn't really about territory? Because, Jiwan said, stepping forward, we listened to what they were really saying. Kept using words like sacred and rightful and ancestors. Those aren't words about resources. Those are words about emotions. Humans, Park added, are good at hearing what people mean, not just what they say. The council speaker pulsed with bright, approving light. The challenge has been completed successfully. The coalition's proposal is withdrawn. Commander Thector looked at Park with new respect. Could have used this success to mock us, to prove that we were wrong to challenge you. Why would we do that? Park asked. You raised valid concerns. You forced us to prove our value. That's exactly what good allies should do. Thector extended his clawed hand to Park. The Vrex acknowledged the worth of human methods. One by one, the other coalition members came forward to offer their respect. The Drakmor delegate praised their honesty. The Zenthi delegate admired their insight. The others each found something to appreciate about human diplomacy. As the council session ended, aliens throughout the chamber approached the human delegation. But their attitude was different now. They weren't fearful or suspicious. They were curious and respectful. How do you learn to think like other species? Asked one delegate. Could you help us resolve a trade dispute? Asked another. We have a cultural misunderstanding that has lasted for decades, said a third. Park and Jawan found themselves surrounded by requests for help, advice and consultation. Later that evening, as they walked through the Federation halls, Jawan reflected, on the day's events, I understand now, she said to Park. It's not that humans are dangerous because we're violent or aggressive. No. We're valuable because we can see problems differently. We can find solutions that other species miss because we don't think like any one species. We think like translators. Park nodded. Every species in the galaxy has strengths and weaknesses. But humans have something else. What? We have the ability to understand everyone else's strengths and weaknesses and help them work together. They stopped at a large window that looked out at the stars. Ships from dozens of different species moved through space, each one representing a different culture, a different way of thinking. The galaxy is full of species who can't understand each other, Park said. They're like pieces of a puzzle that don't seem to fit together. And humans are the people who figure out how all the pieces connect. Juwan looked at her reflection in the window. A week ago, she had thought she was just a normal person taking a new job. Now, she understood that she was part of something much bigger. Mr. Park, she said, what happens now? Now you start doing what humans do best? You help different species understand each other. You solve problems that seem impossible. You build bridges between worlds. And if I make mistakes, Park smiled. Then you learn from them and try again. That's the most human thing of all. As they walked to their quarters, Giwan felt a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. She wasn't just an ambassador or a cultural attaché. She was a translator between worlds, a solver of impossible problems, a bridge builder in a galaxy full of different species who needed help, understanding each other. And tomorrow, she would begin the work that humans were truly meant to do in the galaxy, helping everyone else find ways to work together. The next morning, Jiwan's first request came from the Meridian species themselves. They wanted human help. Setting up their new research station, she smiled as she accepted the assignment. This was just the beginning.